Welcome to the Movie Overload podcast, where we will be covering 100 movies through the history of cinema, from A Trip to the Moon to Parasite, everything in between, except notably a few people, one of which is Woody Allen.
Yeah,
indeed.
Anything to say? Fuck
Woody Allen.
Fuck Woody Allen. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Roman Polanski is another one.
Yeah.
Die in a Hole.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also probably some other pedos aren't involved in our little experiment here that we're doing.
Hopefully none of them snuck through.
No,
My
I don't
name
even think
that we
we know
know of.
Frank Sinatra on any of these. So you
I don't
have
think
to worry
so.
about that.
No, although I have heard he was relatively anti-racist, which is interesting. But it doesn't really
People
make
are
up for
mixed
it.
bowls
TIL.
of punch. They have all their problems and all their good stuff, and you just look at it and you're like, this is gross. Why would anyone drink this?
Like that one guy from the 30s who was like super left-leaning, and he was like a very populist candidate, and he was criticizing FDR because he wasn't left enough and whatever, but he was also like extremely authoritarian, and people are like, how do you reconcile the fact that you're like the only non-racist person in the South in the 30s, but unfortunately you're also authoritarian? That kind of sucks. Anyway, that guy I don't remember his name, he got assassinated. So that's fun.
Fun. Yeah.
My name is Chicken Carcass, and you are
Rhinoceros fingers? Are we?
you can choose
okay.
whatever name you want.
Sure.
I'm just Chicken Carcass.
Hi.
Introduce yourself.
Hi. I'm.
Should I go first?
Yeah, you go first. I'm not sure about the
Stop
precedent.
doing that.
Oh, good grief.
Well,
I mean, the microphone.
usually Hannah and I just go by our names. So
That's true.
I'm just Hunter. I'm not creative.
Mhm.
Not that that's not your real name. I already forgot what it was. Can you say it?
My
again?
real name is Chicken Carcass.
Chicken Carcass.
I
Chicken
change it. I
Carcass.
change my name legally every
Yeah.
time.
Okay.
Well,
right.
not every week, but I change it for every episode somebody's listening to. As we know on this podcast,
True.
we have to kind of sit here continually to record every
Yeah.
episode, which means anybody listening to our back catalog at this exact moment is also hearing our guest host.
Yeah. Hi. I'm guest host. My name's AIDAN.
Yeah.
AIDAN.
The guest host.
Sorry, can you pronounce that one more time?
Friend of the pod.
AIDAN.
AIDAN.
The
AIDAN.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. All right, I'll try to get the pronunciation right, but I'm sorry.
It's pretty hard.
Okay, that's something I feel like people should do. Like, you know, when you have either you have a weird name, or if you are from like a different country and you have whatever, the way people like say your name back to you a few times, are like, I'll try to get that down.
Yeah, yeah.
Like if we just do that to like really white names more often, I feel like that would bring about equity maybe a little better. Is that if everybody has to feel awkward
Sure.
when
Yeah.
they say their name?
Be funny.
Everybody, Chicken Carcass. Carcass. Okay.
Hunter. Hunter.
Oh my gosh. I was like, this is dumb, but I was like telling my dad about this yesterday. It was funny because I changed a bunch of my usernames online to just my hunting hauler's name.
Mm-hmm.
So I then had people in game say that out loud, and like in a Twitch stream I was chatting and read it out loud. And it was really funny because it was like they were confused. It was like they were trying to like figure out and like struggling to parse what it said. And I was like, oh God.
Wait, really? It's so much. I mean, it's less weird than your previous one, but I guess
yeah.
it is a little harder.
It's just, I think it's just harder for people to look at and be like, what?
Yeah.
Like, it was weird. I didn't expect it, but people totally saw that, and like saying it out loud, it was like weirdly difficult. And I was like, I feel like I should change it.
I think that's why
That's
people
weird.
don't read out my stuff, because like I usually go by my names, you know, and they're always so out there
It's true.
that people are like,
Yeah. It's
I
just
don't
weird.
want to say anything there.
At least some of the time. That's odd.
Yeah. Chicken Carcass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I'm still very insecure online, so I use just a nom de plume for everything.
Yeah.
But I ran into the problem where I support some people on Patreon because Patreon's great, and you can help people who you think are doing good things. I don't know if you have a Patreon yet, but this
Not
would be a great
us.
time for a plug.
Yeah, we
no,
do.
we do, but it's whatever.
We haven't added stuff to it yet because we haven't really seen anybody express any interest.
Yeah.
Express interest.
It does exist though.
We got interest. We got some actually quite exciting concepts
okay.
for this Patreon.
Yeah.
There's some good tiers. We have some great ideas. You know, eventually we want to get some King Kong merch that says "He Big Monkey."
Yeah.
That would be good.
Oh,
Uh-huh.
it would be such a good time for that too,
I know.
with the movie coming out.
Yeah.
And also Return to Monkey being a meme.
To Monkey.
Because we started
True.
it before that was a meme.
Yeah, true.
Good times.
Trendsetters.
Yep.
Yeah, no,
Anyway.
we're kind of a big deal despite how small time we are.
Guess.
Though I found somebody on the internet the other day who had like 100 subs maybe.
Mm.
Oh yeah.
And then over the course of like maybe a week and a half, they went up to like 100,000.
Nice.
Wow.
And I'm just hoping something clicks for us.
Yeah.
We're not quite as cool as she is, but like we could get there.
It's gonna just be the Parasite episode. You're gonna get to the Parasite episode. Suddenly, everyone's gonna be watching it. Like, sorry, we're at the end of the 100 movies.
Yeah, like what do we do now? I'll start the new majority report. I'll call it the Minority Report. And
So original.
yeah, it's gonna work.
Nothing has ever been called that before.
Yeah, exactly. People are gonna
Never.
be like, "Whoa, that's so cool.
So cool.
That's such a. Where'd you come up with that name?" And I'll be like, "I got it from the Majority Report,"
Whoa.
and that would be
Wow.
surprising. Anyway, okay. I think we're here to talk about films.
Wait.
Are we?
Aiden,
No.
were you going somewhere with that Patreon discussion?
Oh,
well,
I'm so
no.
sorry. Yeah.
The thing with the Patreon discussion was just that someone misspelled my name in their credits for over a year, and then I popped up in chat once, and they got really offended that I didn't tell them. I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't engage with people online. I'm not that presumptuous.
I'm just here for the ASMR podcast and for what else? Hannah's horror movie experience. Ostensibly, if you
Maybe,
want.
I guess.
I'm
I
just
can
here
find
for the
so
He
much
Big
good
Monkey
stuff.
shirts and the shout out saying that we are your best friend. Yeah, oh man, we'd be so good at shout outs. Honestly, we give you a shout out if you email us. Like, it's not hard.
That's true.
Just
Anyway.
Shout out if you hate tweet us.
Just go
I
out
would
into the
love a hate
street right
tweet.
now
I
and
would
say,
love one.
"Hey, Movie Overload podcast, I'd like a shout out," and we'll shout you out. We'll figure it out somehow.
It's true.
Honestly, it's weird. Like, even people I know in real life haven't been like, "You shout me out on your podcast?"
Yeah.
Because they're like, "Who's listening?"
Right.
And I'm like,
Nobody cares.
You just fucking wait.
It's
Just
okay.
Fucking wait.
We're having fun.
Yeah, we are.
I'm having
I'm
fun.
honestly, it's totally worth it, even if nobody has ever listened to it, which is not even true.
Yeah.
Like, we're lucky that some people
Mhm.
care.
Seems like it, I guess.
Thank you if you're one of those people, which you are. I guess if you're this
They
far
clicked-
into an episode,
They clicked play on the episode. That's the only reason we're saying what we're saying.
it's
Yeah.
exactly the case.
Although
yeah.
it is an
If-
episode about a film, ostensibly about a film, of which we have yet to speak the title of.
True.
Well, it's fine because you got the title. You know, people click on it, they know what it is.
Yeah.
So we don't really do titles. Titles, you deliver the title at the end of the abstract. That's the format that we're going with.
Interesting.
That's not true.
Yeah, so you have to write your abstract the exact way so it ends in the title of the film. Like, if I were to do one, I'd be like,
No.
This movie has been called by many the
Oh,
the,
so you're
the
going for
most
dramatic
the
reveal.
most Irish of claymation films. It is covered in wool from head to toe. It is Shaun the Sheep Farmageddon.
Whoa.
You know,
Okay,
that's how you
okay.
do it.
What I was going to say is we've actually sprinkled all of the words that are in the name of the movie throughout the intro, and you have to listen through the intro and like piece it together.
You have to
yourself.
construct it. It's like a code.
And I'm actually not sure that's
Yeah.
true in this particular case. I think we've said most of the
I
words.
think we have
there's maybe
probably.
Yeah.
but most likely. I don't know.
I know we're recording this at nighttime.
Whoa.
Oh my gosh, it's so dark
yeah.
out.
You're
So
right.
dark.
It is rather dark in here.
Yeah. But don't you dare turn on the lights.
I could turn the light on.
You'll ruin the mood.
I could turn the side light on, so it's like a little bit.
I don't like it. I honestly, the less I can see you guys, the happier I am. Not,
I mean,
and I want to be
likewise,
clear.
Chicken carcass.
Thanks. That's how I got my name.
Oh.
I changed my name to Chicken Carcass because I started to look like a chicken carcass partway through my, I was gonna say gestation period. I don't know what.
In the womb.
In the
Yeah.
in the womb.
You know,
That's
In the egg.
in the
your
egg.
ma was just walking across the street, got hit by a bus carrying a bunch of chickens, and suddenly
I got
Bada
shoved in
bing,
a
bada
chicken
boom.
womb, and I came out like this. You know how chickens have wombs.
Dear.
So yeah. Anyway, this is what the hell is this time that we're having? Basically, all I want to do is pass it over to my dear special guest. You said AIDAN? AIDAN?
yeah.
AIDAN. Here you go, AIDAN. Please, regale us.
Yeah, so let's begin with my recounting of the little synopsis that you'd find on the back of the DVD case.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. In the throes of the Great Depression, two children who alone know where their bank-robbing father hid $10,000 are pursued by a charismatic West Virginian preacher with strange tattoos and stranger religious philosophies, who seems to have blinded the whole world to his true intentions.
That's pretty spoopy.
It's what movie is it?
It's called Night of the Hunter. It's
Oh my gosh. Like right now, it's your night.
Whoa.
Just like, wow.
Who's supposed to be the Knight of Hunter?
yes. This is the Night of Hunter. The film is Night of the Hunter.
Yes.
Charles Layton's 1955 debut and final feature film.
Sad.
Whoa. This is like another one of those ones that we've covered that's like, how did you make a movie that your first time making movie, it gets on this list?
So that's actually an interesting thing. So Charles Layton was technically like a first-time director for film. However, he had an extensive career as an actor going back to the 1926.
That's actually ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
His acting page is like, super long.
Yeah, no, so he won an Academy Award for Best Actor for The Private Life of Henry VIII.
Oh.
He was in the old version of The Hunchback of Notre Dame, not the Disney one.
Mm-hmm.
He was very dead by the time the Disney one came out. No, and then he got into directing for the stage, and then we pick up our tale now. So, do you know how he actually got to direct this movie?
Yeah.
I don't know anything.
Actually, I have the story and I have it memorized for you.
Oh, okay.
Whoa.
So this is actually something we planned before Hunter because, it's your special night. We just wanted to make it like a fun recording experience
Thank
for you.
you.
So what happened? Basically, how it happened was he was acting on the set of Rear Window, and he was on the set. He was acting on the set.
He was loitering.
He was playing. He was kind of practicing this character that he had made up, and Hitchcock was like, "Would you fucking stop it?" And he was like, "Not if you don't let me direct the next film." And he was like, "I got the book right here." And he was holding a Bible upside down. He got it wrong. It was not the right book.
Uh-oh.
He ended up being the inspiration for the West Virginian pastor, by the way.
What?
Well,
And he was like, "Do you want me to tell you the story of the hands?" And he on one hand he said Charles, and on the other hand it said Layton.
how many fingers did he have?
A lot.
So many fingers.
RLZ.
No, so actually,
Yeah.
interestingly
Charles.
enough, when he first got offered the project, he wasn't intending to direct it. He read the book, which was something that just struck him. Loved it. His manager knew the person who published David Grubb's original book 2 years earlier, and he's like, I want to play the preacher. And then they're like, that'd be cool, but also no studio would pay us to let you be the preacher. And so they went around, they tried to get directors, and then finally they're just like, you know who's the only person who could direct this film?
Mm-hmm.
It's you. You're the only one.
Why did they even bother making it at that point?
No, so that's the interesting story behind this novel and everything. The novel was released 2 years earlier in 1953, and it was based off of an old murder trial from 1932? 1932, yeah, which was the hanging of Harry Powers, who was not a preacher, to the best of my knowledge, but he was a lonely hearts killer. He sent out like newspaper adverts, sending out like, "Hey, I'm a lonely romantic. I'm just looking for somebody to love." And then he got people interesting and killed 2 women and their 3 children.
Oh.
And then he got hanged.
He did get the hangings.
And then years later, Davis Grubb, the author of the book, is like, that's interesting. What if I wrote a book about sexual repression in the 1930s during the Great Depression and made it really good? And the book has been described as almost essentially a movie already. It's written in a very expressionistic, forward-moving way. The whole sense of the book is forward momentum. It's written almost like a movie. The book, notably enough, not told in chronological order. It uses flashbacks extensively to give up most of the information. But the book was written in 5 parts, and the screenwriter that they got to adapt it wrote it into 6. And it's one of the famous, it's a kind of famous as a screenplay because much like Citizen Kane, the original screenplay was like, how long was it? No, so this original screenplay was like 250 pages long, I think.
That's a long ass movie.
That's too long.
Yeah, so it was originally so it's 250 pages long. If you adapted that, the rule of thumb for screenplays,
It's a
1 page
a
equals 1 minute.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The original script would have been 4 hours and 15 minutes long.
Which sounds kind of, I mean, I would not want to watch that, but, if this movie felt like it had enough,
It's like just
Yeah.
right.
it
felt
feels
at
like
this
it's,
point.
yeah, like, okay, that's the thing. Sorry, I don't want to cut you off too much, but I like a long film. We know this.
Yeah.
Sure.
But this film felt like a long film in a satisfying way. But it felt like a long film, even though it is like
93 minutes long.
less than
it's pretty
half
short.
the length
Yeah.
of some of the other ones we've covered.
Yeah. Which is partially due to the changes in tone and things throughout. So when the film was being made, Charles Layton went out for a week and spent time with Davis Grubb, and they worked on the film together. So it was a very collaborative process between the directing team and the writing team. And so the 2 major things that Charles Layton wanted to go for when he went into it is he looked at the team, he looked at where movies were presently, and he described that during the silent pictures, he would sit in the theater and he'd see people lean forward in their seat. They were like engaged with the film on a way that once talkies came out, he saw that dissipate. People would sit back, laze about on the film. It wasn't captivating and engaging in the way that it used to be. And so during production, they screened every single one of Griffith's films.
Oh yeah.
Birth of a Nation guy screened all of his films, and those were major inspirations. That was the look. So the reason that like the movie looks the way it does is because they started using a new experimental film stock called Tri-X, which created a higher, sharper contrast between the lights and the darks that more closely paralleled the exposure differences in the like old classic pictures. But also, the film isn't just like Griffith's old films. Griffith's old films were naturalistic, and it incorporates a lot of elements of German expressionism into it. Which so the cinematographer for the film, Stanley Cortez, he worked with Fritz Lang. So he's most famous. He worked. He was the cinematographer for Magnificent Ambersons.
Yes, which it looks very much like.
Yeah, and so he is one of the most famous cinematographers just ever. And he also worked with Samuel Fuller on his two best movies and Fritz Lang on The Secret Behind the Door, I believe it is. But the interesting thing about learning about the making of Night of the Hunter is there are so many different versions of especially what Charles Layton was as a director. Because the things that we know, the studio that they were making the film for truncated, it just pushed it right into production, so it had a minuscule pre-production period. So they went in for pre-production, and they didn't have that much time. And then the shooting period itself was only 6 weeks, which is incredibly short for that time and for today. And so they didn't have time to plan out a lot of things. So every night after shooting, they would get the entire design team together, including the editor and the composer. And they would hold team meetings to like determine what would happen on the next day. They do set drawings, lighting drawings, and it was not a...
I mean, it doesn't sound like a smooth process. That sounds pretty challenging.
Well, so that's the thing, though. At every point in the step, it was a community, like, working together. It wasn't just Charles Layton. Charles Layton, great at working with actors. All of the actors who worked on the film loved him. Robert Mitchum, notoriously difficult actor to work with, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you hear about it all the time. He got clean for that movie.
Really?
Yeah.
That's actually insane.
He was great during that movie. The only thing that gets brought up is that he hated the producer on the film and hated him more and more. Like, their relationship got rockier and rockier as production went on. And at one point, he just went out to the parking lot and pissed on his car. Like, so Robert Mitchum,
like something Robert Mitchum would
still
do.
not great to work with, but that's the only incident. Like, he hated the producer, and the rest of the time, he's a perfect gentleman. He just respected Charles just so much.
Man, that's crazy. Yeah, so cool. Mitchum, I have like a small amount to say about Mitchum, maybe. I haven't seen too much of his films, but one of my favorite contemporary directors, Jim Jarmisch, has worked with Robert Mitchum on specifically Dead Man, and he talks about like just how sort of terrifying it was to work with Robert Mitchum because like not only has he like, you know, the reputation of being challenging to work with and whatever, but he's like his agent, everybody who was working with him, his assistant, all these people were like, no, he doesn't actually need to come to set. Like he comes to set for, you know, he'll be there for 5 minutes. You don't need to see it beforehand. There's I don't know, all these stories about like how challenging it was just to get to work with him for a little bit of time and get something out of him. So it's wild to hear that there's actually somebody that was able to work with him in that way.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of the whole process. So the actors, they stopped at a point in production. They would like give little notes to Charles Layton, say, "Hey, oh, this should work. What do you think of this?" And he would get so distraught. He'd "Oh, I'm doing it wrong, aren't I?" He was very insecure about like, "Oh, you're right. I'm doing it wrong. I need to fix this." And so they just stopped giving him notes on what they wanted to do, because they're like, he's doing a fine job. We're just hurting him because he didn't have that confidence in his own ability. Even though you look at the film, he didn't actually know anything about how to work the camera. He relied on the cinematographer. And so the cinematographer would just show him a shot. "Hey, here's the shot." Just be like, I like it. That's good. Or I change it. And that's how their process worked. It was, as a director, a managing and people working sort of position. And so in the actual production period, usually when you make a film and you're like in production, you shoot things in takes.
Right.
Take one, you do this. They used a different method to try and he said it was to like direct more like a silent film. They started a reel. The reels were 10 minutes long, and they just run the reel until they got it. So they do a take at the beginning, and then they just work through it until they had what they wanted to get. The scenes in this film aren't that long. There aren't that many scenes that are actually lengthy that go on that long. That's the interesting thing. It kind of feels like a series of vignettes at a point where they're in the candy shop, and then they go outside, and they're doing.
I think that's what makes it work so well.
Yeah.
Though, yeah, it has this weird story, like chapter book thriller feeling. Like it has a weird combination of a children's book and a thriller type novel, I guess, because there are these short little segments of little things that happen. It doesn't give you this like massive amount of information at all times, but it's just enough to make it feel full, but make it feel fanciful and weird. And having like short little segments shot in that very like specific Magnificent Ambersons kind of way, it makes it have just this whole other watching experience that's very unlike pretty much any other film on the list. And I do find that also interesting, of like him being somebody who's very like not confident in his own like style, or if he has a style, like he just was relying so much on everybody else, whatever. Because in some of the theory I've been reading recently, because I'm a nerd, was talking about, well, with the way filmmaking is developed nowadays, you don't even really need anybody sitting in the director's chair. You can just make films. I think what he said is, a chimpanzee could direct a film. The film crews know what they're doing. But what's the difference between a quasi chimpanzee and a director is that a pattern is established. And so I find that interesting, because he directed one very good film, but according to a lot of the theorists of his day, it would not be he would not be considered even a director. Like he wouldn't. Nobody would be able to be like, he directed a good film. They'd be like, did he direct it?
So
'cause he never got to direct anything else.
Well, and that's a big part of it. So it was a fairly low budget film. It was made for somewhere between 400 and 800 grand at the time, which is about $3.5 to $7.5 million today.
Okay.
Which for a studio film, that's pretty small. And that was due to the film is not actually shot in West Virginia where it takes place.
It does look like it's on a stage.
Yeah, so they had their B team go out and do like stock footage shots that they use a lot of rear projection to create bigger scenes. The entire film, minus those shots, was shot on a film ranch, the studio film ranch for the company, and on a soundstage. And so all of the structures you see are built and designed for the film. And that is why a lot of choices were made that seem a bit weird, because the direction that the set designer was given was to give the audience the eyes of John, like a little boy. A little boy focuses on what he focuses on and doesn't see what he doesn't see. And so, especially when you get into the town, I remember when we were watching this film together, when Ruby goes into the drugstore and gets ice cream in the movie magazine, you see the shot and it has the signs, like these neon signs above it. They're just on a wall and don't seem to really point to anything.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So a little kid is just going to see the signs and they aren't going to notice the other things around it because the signs are big and flashy.
Yeah.
And so it's to give it the feeling. So, and that's a big thing with the feeling. So, like, there's a bunch of weird things that happen as the movie starts off that we don't see in movies anymore. Like, the first scene where we meet the Reverend and he's driving in his car. He's just talking to God and basically describing himself as a character. And that's because there hadn't been a character like that before. Like, they went into it and they're like, he's a preacher, but also he's a serial killer. And there isn't really a, like, the serial killer, like, true crime subgenre is not alive at this point. Like, this film kind of, like, helped inspire a lot of films that came after it. You had, like, a couple of silent films. You had Fritz Lang's M, and then you had this. And so the idea of, like, a serial killer in the public consciousness is just really like Jack the Ripper, or like those real happenings that became like folk tales that people would tell.
Sure.
And so you have that going in.
Yeah.
But also you have the score, which this is one of my favorite movie scores, like, ever. One of the reasons why it's so good is because the person who's scoring the movie, the composer, was on set throughout the entire production, which is unheard of. This isn't really done today.
It's very rare.
This wasn't done back then. But Charles Layton's biggest thing was just having everyone there and helping him out so that they'd, like, all be working on this together. And so there are a number of different themes. You have, like, the preacher theme, dun 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 dun, which is just big and loud and, like, old movie melodramatic.
Yeah.
Leading into, like, the small town, like, score, which is very bouncy, very, like, carefree. It really feels like I see the two, like, tones of this movie as Andy Griffith's Show and, like, Metropolis. Like, it goes between those kind of feelings.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
That's actually a very... I didn't... Like, I heard you kind of say, oh, there's this Andy Griffith segment, and that's totally there. But, yeah, I guess you have mentioned Lang a few times already, but it has Metropolis... Well, it definitely has M vibes. I don't know if you've seen M. Very, very good. But it has this, like... Yeah, definitely... The only thing I was really thinking in my head when I was watching the film is, like, German expressionism. German expressionism. It's like it's the lifeblood of the film. But then you throw on top of it your I don't know, your very southern kinds of vibe on top of it. Southern evangelical white Christian vibe thing that is almost like when you put them next to each other, you could kind of see how scary each one of them are I don't know, when they're next to each other, they're both scary, I guess.
Yeah, and it's someone else talk. I'm finding things in my notes.
There's so many notes.
Good.
That's the fun thing about the podcast is that you have the ability to write and write and write and write, and then when it comes time to record, you got to figure out which bits of it actually make sense for the context of the conversation you end up having, you know?
Yeah.
It's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, so the screenwriter is Davis Aggie, by the way.
Oh, nice. Okay.
He was like really famous as actually a film critic.
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote a couple other screenplays and things. And it's the writership, the authorship of the screenplay here is one of those very contentious authorships. It's like Citizen Kane, but in reverse, where someone came in with a massive script. The director came in, basically rewrote all of it. But in Night of the Hunter's case, he isn't listed as one of the authors. In Orson Welles' case, he just says, "Hey, I wrote it," and people are like,
yeah.
"But didn't Mankiewicz do something?" And they're like, "Yeah, he probably did something." It's contentious, but there are some things that are definitely still there from the original script. So the way the original script ended was you had the last shot, like Christmas, and then it panned up to the sky. And you saw the stars, and then he described like faces blooming in the like darkness of space, like a million different children. And that was cut from the script, and it didn't appear in the script anywhere, but somehow it made its way into the opening of the movie.
Right. Yeah.
At some point, they decided to add that back in, which is interesting.
That,
Another thing, so fun, spicy things about censorship.
censorship.
In the burlesque club, when Reverend Harry Powell's, we first see him, he's driving, stops at a burlesque club, and he's sitting there, and his right hand with the hate tattoo over the knuckles reaches into the jacket pocket and flips out a switchblade and like pokes through his jacket pocket. In the script, he reached into his pants pocket and like stabbed out from his crotch.
Wait, really?
Yeah. And then like the producers looked at it and they're like, that is way too horny for 1950s America.
Wow.
Like, we're never going to get away with that.
In this case,
Yeah,
I'm
not
glad that
gonna
got
happen.
cut, because that's kind of dumb.
That's kind of everything about that. Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Jeez.
No. So they had the editor in other censorship news on set for the entire time, but they didn't actually cut anything in the movie except for one scene until it was all shot.
What scene?
That one scene is the honeymoon scene, because they were afraid, hey, so we're still under code right now? We still have some code restrictions. And so some decency code stuff. We want this movie to actually get released and people to see it. So we need to make sure that the censorship board is fine with this scene. And so they cut it, and they cut that ahead of time and sent it out to them. And the reason that, so at the time it was still illegal, well, not illegal, but you couldn't do certain things in film. One of those is show a man and a woman in the same bed at the same time,
Right.
which is why you don't have them get in
Why
bed
she
together.
tries to get in bed and he's like, "Fuck you."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that whole, they have this whole bit where he like reaches out and she like, Shelley Winters like grabs for his hand and he's like, just close the window.
Yeah.
And that was actually improvised on set.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
That's great.
Fun stuff like
I
that.
like that.
Oh, that whole movie. That now I have to remember that film, and it was kind of sad, and I felt bad for her. But like I was quite vocal when we were watching it. Very negative feelings about a lot of the female roles and etc. But it's all made up for in my mind by both the majestic image, gruesome as it is, of her like sitting in the car under the water was amazing.
Oh yeah.
And also like that one like wide shot of the bedroom when he's like about to kill her, and it like is so obviously set, but it's like the best thing that I've ever seen in my life.
Pretty.
And so that's just the backdrop and the bed and lights. Like, and they came up with that image, and so the cinematographer actually, you can see like a faint halo of light around her head to like foreshadow the fact that she's about to die. And when they were shooting that scene, a famous story from the production, the cinematographer was standing there lighting it, and Charles came up to him and was like, "Hey, what are you thinking about?" He's like, "Thinking about music." Well, what are you thinking about? He's like, I'm thinking of a waltz. And he names a specific Italian waltz. And that actually served as the inspiration for the theme, Willa's theme in the film, which is this waltz. This waltz tempo that plays throughout like the whole
It's majestic.
scenes with her and such. Yeah. So you have that, and so we can go back in. There are a lot of, I watched through the commentary, the Criterion commentary that they had for this.
Nice.
In reaction, and to like prepare for this, I was curious. I did not realize how much of this film was just put together in post. Like they had all like the shots with the boat on the river where the like old guy is. He lives on that boat on the river, and so they have that in the studio. They have between shots, they switch from a shot that was done in the studio, a B-roll from the second unit that was out shooting stuff in West Virginia, and then they have stuff from the ranch, and then like you see a steamboat like crossing behind it, and it's just like composited in.
Whoa.
Like all of the animal shots on the river, you see like the animal in front of the river, all of those shots are composited in. Like they did the foreground element and the background element, and they composited in later. Like
That's
the
cool.
bunnies, you have like those two bunnies sitting there. They only had one bunny, so they composited the same bunny twice.
That's incredible.
That's awesome. Jeez.
And the frog one definitely looks like that
Yeah.
for sure, but it's
really noticed.
in a good way. Like it doesn't just kind of look like an effect or something. It's like stylistically interesting to do it that way.
Well, and that's the whole thing with this movie is it overcomes any like budget or technical limitations it had by introducing stylistic elements that like age way better than trying to make it look realistic. The first thing,
yeah, like why the original King Kong is still somehow magically watchable.
Yeah, because if you don't try to make it look real, you just try to make it look like good and interesting, it will continue looking good and interesting. The first thing that comes to mind is like when they are on the river and they stop at the barn, and you see like a cutout of a house with a window and a bird sitting in it, and a cutout of a barn, and that was just on a studio. Like the entire river itself was just in the studio.
That's amazing.
And
it did have like a small world kind of vibe to it.
Yeah. And they did all of it. Like when they woke up in the morning and they see the preacher like coming along the horizon, he's like, "Don't you ever sleep." They did that through forced perspective. They didn't composite it or something. They did it in the studio with forced perspective. They got like a short actor and put him on like a donkey and had him just like ride on against like the wall of the studio.
Wow.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Wow.
Cool.
Yeah, man, for a movie that's so like still somehow like it's just it aged so well. It's so stylistically interesting. It doesn't really feel quite like any one other thing, at least.
Mhm.
Yeah, like those kinds of composited shots and forced perspective and all those
Mhm.
sorts of things I would like to see more in movies, honestly, that I
Mhm.
don't feel like I've seen very often. Like it's the kind of stuff that's definitely been replicated in Over the Garden Wall, and
Mhm.
other than that, I don't have any experience with it.
Yeah.
But but man, there should be more of it, and it's interesting how it feels like this movie is, if not an accident, sort of necessitated by, you know, limitation in such a way that it's not like, this is just the way that Charles Layton would make films.
Yeah.
There,
It reminds me of. Go ahead.
I don't know, just a small thing that I was thinking, just talking about just the sets and the artificiality of it, I guess. It was like, that was just something that came up with the people that I watched it with. Like, the thoughts did not come from me, but there was just talk about how, like, the fact that it is sort of very obviously on a set a lot of the time, but is still kind of convincing, like, adds to just the kind of dreamy, I don't know, surreal feeling of a lot of it.
Exactly.
And like it does end up enhancing the feeling of it overall.
Yeah, which is kind of the difference between Wizard of Oz and this, is that Wizard of Oz was definitely on a set very obviously, but it was like trying to be this more expansive world.
Yeah.
And it felt like it was trying to hide the fact that it was a set
Yeah.
as much as it could.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of made it harder to get into for me.
Mhm.
But this being like, it's a set, the style was really cool.
Yeah. It's interesting.
It does remind me of, I had this kind of rant about, I think Redbeard back in the day. Sorry. Because I'd heard people say essentially, I don't know, the notion of like, film can't really be considered an artistic medium in the same way as other ones, because not only are there so many people involved and whatever, but because there's like all this studio interference and there's all this financial stuff getting in the way. It's not like just painting where you just paint or something. But I don't know how I feel about that, because a lot of examples of movies that like do things really crazy, like there are examples of like really crazy cool movies that have big budgets or something, I guess. But predominantly it's people who are new, people who are trying something new, but people who are doing those sorts of things because they kind of have to. I guess another, like, Redbeard is sort of different because it's the last movie that Kurosawa and Mifune did together, but it was plagued with massive studio problems. They spent like so much longer filming it than any other project they'd ever done, and it just became this kind of behemoth that they, even after doing stuff like Seven Samurai, weren't quite capable of doing. And that's what I think made the performances really interesting. That's all that kind of conflict and whatever ends up being an actually like really good driving factor to make something interesting. So I guess all I'm saying is The Night of the Hunter is more proof that having limitations doesn't make the medium less valuable, and doesn't make what you're able to do less interesting.
Well, that, and I think something that's so often overlooked when people talk about film is the collaborative aspect of the medium.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that really stood out to me when researching it was how much of a collaborative atmosphere the entire like project was. Like, the entire photography team was actually just brought over from another film from the same studio, Black Tuesday. And so they already all knew each other, already knew how to work with each other. And so they were able to move really smoothly. It was shot in 6 weeks. It wasn't like a hard shoot. It was like a really easy shoot, apart from the fact that they'd like sit around drinking all night trying to figure out what they're going to shoot the next day. It was like, by all accounts, like a really smooth environment to work within. And so one of my pet peeves with the movie industry as a whole is how the process tends to, especially early on, like segment people apart. Like they aren't working together. Like in the casting process for this movie, they didn't have actual auditions. Charles just went to these people's houses and just talked with them. And they were all really surprised. He didn't talk about the film. He didn't have them do like readings. He just got to know them. And if he thought he liked them and stuff, he's like, yeah, no, they're good for this movie. Like so, Willa, they had a couple people in mind, and at one point, Grace Kelly, Betty Grable, and Agnes Moorehead were like attached to the part of Willa, which eventually wound up going to Shelley Winters, who Leighton brought on because she used to be one of his acting students.
Oh,
Like,
interesting.
That's how he found a lot of the people who were in the movie. He taught them how to act. So he knew they were good. He's like, yeah, no, I know you.
That's cool.
You're good.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Man, like, okay, it's fun to see like all the different weird, diverse ways that people end up making good movies, as we've talked about this kind of thing. Because right, you got your like Tenno dictator kind of director who, you know, is in charge of every little process, involved in the weeds of every little thing. You have people who are just very experimental, wanting to try new things. And then there are the people that are just like, I don't know, I'm just kind of a good person. I just want to get along. Like, I don't know, just everybody from John Huston to Chaplin to, you know, to Leighton, just a vast diversity of, you can get a good product by doing multiple different things. We don't all have to be like auteurs with extremely distinctive Wes Anderson-y kind of styles, and everything needs to go exactly a specific way for it to be considered a good film, which is kind of where it feels like American film has gone. Every good American film now, or the ones that get all the Oscar attention or whatever, they're all kind of the same film to an extent, and their sets feel all the same way.
Yeah.
And I don't know that it, like, I don't know, is there something kind of lost by the fact that like we don't have quite as many just randomly absolutely garbage films by people who don't know how to make movies but somehow got studio funding, and also people trying out new ways to make good movies and somehow being successful. Like it's so streamlined, I guess.
Yeah, well, so you get those things, you get them, you get your New Mutants, they happen.
I guess that's true.
But we
But
don't,
that's because of studio
you know,
interference normally.
we
right?
don't really, we don't, well,
I haven't seen it.
that's the thing. It's like, how much of it is studio's fault, and how much of it is sometimes it just, like, you only really see when you're looking back, you're looking retrospectively at film history, it looks very different than it probably did at the time.
Right.
Like, there was a bunch of trash released back then, but we don't think about it or know about it because it just didn't live on.
We've had enough time for it to filter out the good stuff. Yeah.
And now we have a lot of trash. We have so much trash, so much trash.
But who will remember in 30 years?
But it's all
Most of
dropped
it.
straight to VOD on Amazon. Like, it's just...
Yeah, that's true.
It isn't getting big theatrical releases because only big blockbusters are getting theatrical releases now. And like occasionally, like
some of those aren't even getting them.
Yeah. You know.
Yeah.
Well, especially now.
So sad.
I cry.
Man. The trailer for Godzilla vs. Kong and it being like on HBO Max, and I'm like, man, I want to see that in a theater, but I guess I'm only probably gonna be able to watch it on Max.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it'll be good, but there's like you gotta watch like a King Kong or a Godzilla. Like, you gotta see those in the theater anyway. Like,
Must a movie be good?
And this is where
that's a good point.
medium might not. If something is good enough, yeah, it'd be best to see on a big screen, but it can still like find life afterwards. So moving on to like how this movie was released, the studio they brought this film, the finished film, to the studio, and they were like, it's too art housey.
And they're like,
Okay.
what are we supposed to do about that?
Jeez.
And so the producer was like, hey, no, so we want to make this like a road show sort of thing. Like how old musicals were released. They like travel this show, this like film from like state to state and get it noticed. But the distributors had the ultimate say, and they were like, we don't know what to do with this movie. It's weird and kind of creepily sexual. Like the whole movie is like really about repressed sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the major
Comes up in a few different ways.
themes. Yeah, like the Reverend, the reason why he's able to like control people so well is that like everyone in the film wants to fuck Robert Mitchum.
Yeah.
Like except for like the kids, and Pearl is still like
Small child.
yeah. She doesn't want to fuck him, but she wants him to be her daddy.
This is a creepy way to put it, but like
It is literally
so.
literally what is in the text.
Yeah,
it's true.
yes.
It's true.
Sure.
Yeah, and like the whole thing with Icy Spoon.
Yeah.
Fun fact: the old woman, her name is Icy Spoon.
Yes, that was so
Wait,
great.
really?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, who runs the runs the
Spoons.
ice cream shop that Willow works at.
Wow.
Icy Spoon. She has that whole thing where
That's so funny.
she has the hots for Robert Mitchum.
Totally.
Oh,
But
yeah.
she's married, so
Yeah.
how she takes that out is by playing matchmaker with this
Yeah.
this woman whose husband just died like a week ago.
Yep.
She's like, no, you need another man.
She's my least favorite character in this movie. She's like,
Sucked.
like she's arguably like as much of a horrible person as Robert Mitchum's character. Like she's just up there for me of like somebody who should. I don't hang him. I don't. Sorry, that's pretty extreme. Don't hang her.
Yeah,
But like, jeez.
well, that's part of the uncomfortable thing about some of this movie is the kind of misogynistic undertones in that apart from Lillian Gish's character, every single female character is either dumb or very easily manipulated.
Right. Yeah.
Like Ruby, the little girl from the end
Mm-hmm.
who just falls in love with Robert Mitchum because she buys it. He buys her ice cream, but also has that weird like subtext to it of like in the book it's explicit, but they like kind of bring it up in the film. Like every week she goes down to like the creek and sleeps with a different guy, and she's like 13. It's weird.
Oh.
In the film, they actually added Lillian Gish, who plays Caroline, the old woman, angelic like savior figure that they meet at the end. They add this interaction, this part of the interaction between her and Ruby when Ruby comes there, and she's like, "I've been really bad. I met this guy, but I've been around the block a few times," and they added in the part where Lillian Gish is just like, "Oh, you poor little kid.
Yeah.
Right.
You've just been looking for love the only way you know how." And they add in that redemption arc
It's
for
so good.
Ruby's character,
Yeah.
which is like I like a lot of what they did with that. And reportedly, one of the reasons that Charles Layton was actually just attached to the script in the way he was that so the themes of sexual repression and everything in the film, an annoyingly underseen fact or piece of information about Charles Layton is that he was at least bi, if not fully gay.
Okay.
His
Fully gay.
he was married, but they never had children. And when his wife, who's also an actress, published her memoir, she claimed that the reason why they never had children was because he was gay. From the people he worked with and spent time with at the around the time, they all corroborate the fact that he was also interested in men.
Mm-hmm.
And in his life, he started out in a place where he was very sexually repressed and then became kind of sexually insatiable. Like, as he went on with his life.
As it goes.
As it goes.
Interesting.
And the reason why Robert Mitchum was cast in the role of the preacher is because the preacher needed to be sexy, because you sell religion through sex appeal. Like, to sell religion, you have to be sexy, is what Charles said when he was talking about casting.
Interesting.
That is very interesting. I don't find Robert Mitchum as attractive as everybody else in the world, I guess, but maybe it works. Maybe it works for some people.
Yeah,
seemingly does.
I guess.
Yeah. So, I want your takes because we're all raised around Christian religion.
Mm-hmm.
When you how do you think the people at the time received this movie?
I would assume it felt like kind of an affront, being like, you took this, and I mean, even though he's the bad guy, it's also like, ooh.
That's the problem is, from a perspective, like maybe a decent perspective, it's good to call out the way that like you can bundle up religion or Christianity or evangelicalism or whatever and sell like really terrible stuff within that package. I feel like it's a good thing to be able to call that out and be like, all right, beware who it is that you're just instantly listening to and giving all of this power and whatever. However, I don't think a lot of people want to hear that.
And they actually, in the book, Harry Powell is a Christian reverend. In the film, they specifically at the dialogue between him and Ben in the prison cell where, oh, the good Lord, we have the religion that we've worked out just between the two of us.
Okay.
He's like,
It's pretty good.
Explicitly not really Christian.
Heretical.
But that didn't really help. So this film was originally released as a double feature with another film. It was a B feature to that film. It didn't sell. Like, nobody, like, even though certain publications listed it in their top 10 of films of the year at the end of the year, nobody saw the movie. It completely flopped.
Weird.
Because Unitas artists refused to do any sort of publicity for the film because they saw it as an art film and they didn't know how to sell it. Because how do you sell it? Is it a thriller? Sort of. It's kind of like a dark fairy tale sort of vibe.
Yeah.
But they were like, I don't think we can sell kids in danger to like random people in the 50s. So in the promotional material, they didn't even like mention the kids. Who are the main characters of the film. They just didn't bring them up. They're like, oh yeah, there's some kids there. But really it's about like Shelley Winters. And they played it off as like a erotic thriller sort of thing.
Oh.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, that wasn't that's weird. I don't I mean, it makes sense why it flopped. Do you have like some like specific information on how it got big?
Okay, so I do. But the reasons why this flops gets a bit more intricate because the anti-religious and sexual themes made it very controversial. The Catholic Archdiocese of Oklahoma forbid it to be distributed in the state.
That's
you could not watch it in Oklahoma.
That's what we've talked about this a decent amount. Usually like weird code shit, people protesting bits of movies that we've talked about. It's always the Catholics. They're like, fuck the ability to communicate within film.
In this case, it wasn't just the Catholics. So the Legion of Decency gave this film a B designation for degrading marriage.
Nice.
The
Because if you
Legion of
show a-
Decency is
If you
like
show a bad marriage in a film, it's like, people think that marriages can be bad now. No, they're always good all the time.
I love it. Like, okay, every time I hear somebody talk about the Legion of Decency on this podcast, I always think of like the Super Friends or like the Justice League or something like that. And it's just like this idea of them all, like in this very like 50s like government building, sitting around in like tights or something.
Yeah, and so
Legion of Decency.
it wasn't just the Catholics or the Legion of Decency. The Protestant Film Board hated it, and they banned it in the city of Memphis.
Specifically Memphis.
Specifically Memphis.
Ah, that makes sense. That definitely had a positive impact on Memphis, I'm sure. That's why Memphis is the last holdout of true Christianity in the world.
Because it wasn't corrupted.
Yeah,
Yeah, it wasn't
so,
corrupted like the rest of Christianity.
So the movie just died. It fell into obscurity until the 70s, where a bunch of TV stations would have like old film like revival blocks. They'd play old films, and it started growing like a cult following. And because a bunch of kids would see it, and they'd be like, "That's a scary movie," because kids are in danger in it. Like, it gained a reputation as being kind of scary, but also as being really good. Like, people watching it, like, that's really good. It's like a really good movie. And it started getting like noticed from some major like film critics of the time. And they're like, this is kind of an underseen classic. And lo and behold, in the 1970s, it was picked up and added to the Library of Congress, establishing it as like an all-time American
70s?
classic.
So that didn't take too long.
Yeah, so the National Film Registry put it in, I think, 73.
Dang.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's definitely a pretty familiar story.
Mm-hmm.
We've heard a few things that basically went down that same road. I guess
Yeah.
probably we talked about like that with like It's Wonderful Life, basically be the
Right.
same thing, right?
Yeah, I didn't,
Mhm.
but I didn't know the National Film Registry was around back then.
Mm.
That's the interesting.
Yeah, no. It was some of the early time of it. Other fun facts. So did you know it used to be illegal to show American money in film?
No.
Yeah, you couldn't show American currency. You couldn't like record or photograph American currency.
That's bizarre.
I guess for concerns about like forging currency or something. I don't know. So,
Everybody has it.
but all of the money, like the $10,000 you see
Oh, yeah.
hidden in the doll. Spoilers.
Whoa.
What? Those are Mexican pesos.
Really?
Yep.
Nice.
Damn pesos.
Why couldn't you show?
It was against the law.
That's hilarious.
It was legally forbidden to
But-
show American currency in film.
It's not gonna make
Yeah.
sense. Laws
That,
don't make sense.
I believe that has
I don't know.
since then been redacted.
yeah,
you
I
can
feel-
do it.
Presumably,
I would think
Yeah.
so. I'm pretty sure American dollars are in movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so the weirdest bit of rear projection in the film, in my opinion at least, the fishing scenes, you know, the scenes where they're on the fishing boat,
Yeah.
they didn't have a pond to shoot that in, so the background is rear projected. They're just sitting in a boat on a studio.
that is so convincing. Though.
What?
It's so convincing.
Oh, wait. Okay.
Wow.
That's awesome. That did make me think though. How did they do the underwater shot?
So they got a tank.
Okay.
It was actually in a tank.
Oh,
And so
okay.
one of the I noticed Chicken Carcass noticeably laughed when they do the shot of the grandpa just looking down into the water, and it's just really clear
Yeah.
because they just shot that in a tank
Okay.
with
And
with
then
the side there, and they had a like the face. The face was actually sculpted by the same makeup artist who did Citizen Kane's old age makeup.
Nice. It
Which was very good.
It was
Yeah.
very convincing. I just kind of wondered, like, oh, is that her?
Yeah.
Nice.
And so
that's awesome.
that film is actually noted now. Specifically, everyone remembers that shot. That shot of like underwater with like the reeds and everything, and you see like the slit across her throat, because at the time you wouldn't show that slit in the throat. You'd leave it just at like the grandpa sitting there drunk being like, she's sitting there in the water floating like she had an extra mouth. Like, which he says in that, and you're like, yeah, that's a great image, but also you see it ahead of time.
Yeah.
You just see it there.
Very nice.
Kind of unheard of.
Yeah, I just remember like hearing how much difficulty they had with the underwater shot in Sunset Boulevard, and then seeing that and being like, well, this is even more like elaborate. What's going on?
Yeah.
But that makes sense, just having a tank.
So to go back to a previous thought, though, I have a slight correction.
Ooh. Oh.
Night of the Hunter was added to the film registry in 92.
Oh, 92.
The registry was created in 89.
It's the Library of Congress, a different date, maybe.
Maybe. I'm
this
trying
is
to...
the Library of Congress National Film Registry.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Lol.
Yeah, okay.
I didn't
So
know that.
that was what was said. I was just taking from a lot of the extra material from the special features on the Criterion.
Gotcha.
Disc. So that might have been just some mistyping on my part, because I wasn't like copying and pasting. I was pausing every like 7 seconds to like type down new pieces of information.
Right. No, that's how it is with those.
Ugh.
But that does make it actually very early on for that, because it started in 89 and they released 25 films every year that they add into it.
Mm-hmm.
So if it was in 92, that's like, the fourth year or whatever of the registry, which is pretty quick.
Yeah.
A lot of the ones that we've covered ended up getting inducted in that first year.
Yeah.
But that's, I don't know. It's interesting. I'm glad that it built itself up to the reputation that it deserves.
The tragedy of it is that everyone wishes Charles Layton like directed another film, but he had his heart and soul in this film, and when it bombed, it crushed him. So he just didn't direct ever again. And about half a decade later, he wound up dying from being old. He was born a while ago.
He was born in 1899.
Yeah.
Like Hitchcock.
Yeah. So
Who's that?
I don't know.
this is some guy.
Some nobody that no one knows. We haven't covered any of his movies on this
I don't know.
podcast before, so like, who cares?
Probably made some movies sometime.
He's probably fucking dumb.
Right.
Yeah.
some dumb Brit.
Yeah.
I was gonna say he's British.
Alfred, I mean, like,
Just
seriously.
kidding.
Gotta be British. Or are we? All right. Well, do we have any kind of final wrapping up thoughts?
trying to think of
Rankings, ratings, general feelings, conclusions.
Movie's good.
Movie's
Yeah.
good.
Movie's pretty.
It is very
And
pretty.
interesting for all of the above reasons.
Definitely recommend that you watch Magnificent Ambersons then.
No.
Because it's Magnificent Ambersons is like if you did Gone with the Wind in an hour and a half, but it was self-aware and it looked like this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. That sounds pretty good.
Also,
Yes.
if you don't mind some more problematic elements and ableist elements, Samuel Fuller's 2 films he did with Stanley Cortez, the cinematographer from this, Shot Corridor and The Naked Kiss, are really good.
Okay. Nice.
Just so you know. They're really good movies. Shot Corridor has some problems because it's set in a mental hospital and kind of treats mental illness as like a schlocky thriller thing.
Like how pretty much everything has treated
Yeah.
mental illness before like 3 years ago.
Yeah, I mean it's understandable, but
Unfortunately.
it's still
It's gross.
it's still a bit gross. There's
Yeah.
there's this whole thing where there's like a black man who is brainwashed through trauma into believing he's a member of the Ku Klux Klan. It's it
Okay.
it has
It's
yeah
a Chappelle skit.
yeah yeah.
Funny.
When I saw that, I was a bit curious. Did he watch Shot Corridor? He might have. He might just come up on his own though. It's not like it's a wow. I wonder why no one's thought of that before. I did.
Right. It's
Very different contexts on those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, like they won't let him have pillowcases because he keeps like cutting them into Klan hoods.
Oh god.
It's I'm sorry I made like the last few minutes of this like really dark.
It's
No,
great.
it's not.
It's fine.
In funny news, the film was actually Night of the Hunter was gonna be censored way more because of the use of the term "whores of Babylon."
Huh.
But they were actually able to argue the film board down because it was used in the Bible.
That's so funny. I love
Nice.
it. Oh my god.
Great.
Somebody should have made a protest film in that era and gotten it pushed through because like they only said really gross things but like took them from direct Bible quotes.
Yeah.
Ugh. Like just this like
awesome.
dissociated like rant cut together from like some crazed pastor, but it's just like all of the gross things like forcibly circumcising people or whatever. I feel like that's something that happened in the Bible.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, good times. Yeah, I don't know. It's a good movie. It remains in my head visually.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. No, and just the thing that I would, when I first discovered this film, which was through Robert Ebert's The Great Movies. It was just there, and it had like a picture from Robert Mitchum chasing kids up the stairs from the cellar, and I was like, I need to see this movie.
Nice.
I sang the like hymn that the preacher would sing just all the time.
Creepy. I guess they're all creepy.
Yeah.
That's great.
So, but I didn't realize that hymn was invented for this film.
Oh,
Wait,
nice.
what?
It was invented for
What?
this film because they didn't want to give any validity to the preacher's like
That
use
can't
of religion.
possibly be true.
That's so
Yeah,
good.
it was.
Are you kidding me?
That's perfect.
Yeah, no, it didn't exist beforehand.
Okay,
Fantastic.
so, my stepmother, when she had kids, right?
Uh-huh.
Oh.
That's the lullaby she'd sing them to sleep with.
Fuck.
Very similarly.
And
Like, I don't believe that was created for this film, because if so, that's incredibly funny that she's lulling kids to sleep by singing this song.
No, they were very specific about that fact that the
I-
preacher wasn't singing a real hymn.
Huh.
And the remix
What?
they do with like when the grandma sitting on the porch with the shotgun and they're singing to each other, where she's like, leaning on Jesus, leaning on Jesus. That's also like invented for the film.
Okay, I'd never heard that one before, but I
Yeah.
definitely heard Robert Mitchum's one a million times.
Yeah, well, it's
Oh.
memorable. It has become a part of the culture, and you just assume it's been there forever. But no, it was invented for this movie that not enough people have seen.
That's wild.
It's so weird.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, wow, that's incredible. Well, okay, geez, I don't even know where to go from there. That's life changing. It's great. It's a good movie. I give it 4.5 stars. I'll put it in probably somewhere in my top 10, maybe, of the movies we've covered, because it's good.
Pardon me.
What do you think?
I also gave it 4.5 stars. It's just, I don't know. It's just kind of good. It's fun. It's one of the more like, I feel like, easy to watch movies we've seen, but like still has a lot of interesting stuff going on.
Yeah,
Like, it's just a good time. You can watch it with your friends.
Mm-hmm.
you can watch it with your
that's
friends.
what I
That's
did,
so
yeah.
true.
Yeah, the first time.
Wow.
As someone, the only person here who has seen this film more than 5 times, the first
I mean,
every time you
less
see
than
it, the film feels shorter. The first time you see it, it feels really long. It's
Yeah.
only an hour and a half. It's not like a long movie,
It did feel
but
kinda long.
because
It was weird.
halfway through it goes really just kind of ethereal and like, oh, they're floating down the river, and it just breaks the continuity of action so harshly and makes the film feel like 3 hours.
Yeah, like
the first time you see it.
I think that was it. Like I think I didn't expect it to transition into like a completely different setting, basically.
Yeah.
And so when that was happening, I was like, wait, is it ending? And then it was like, oh wait, no, this is just like a whole extra like section, and it was kind of weird, but it was good still, for sure. Didn't ruin anything at all. But I was like, whoa, this does feel weirdly long, even though it's not at all.
It's the I don't know where they're going
Yeah.
with this syndrome where you're just sitting there. I don't know where they're.
Yeah.
What's happening now? What? Wait, what? What's going on?
Mhm.
This isn't like a typical movie structure, I don't know how this movie's supposed to end. I guess
Oh man.
Harry gets shot, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Oh, that was so funny though when he just like panics for like kind of out of nowhere and,
And he
just, like,
yips
runs
and he
away.
runs
It's like, oh, all right, bye.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting. That was fun.
It's a good performance.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Okay. I feel like we can maybe wrap it up for this week. That's a good theme. All right, thanks guys for listening to the podcast. As we
I
say
just realized.
at the end, when it's the time, the end of the show, where I say we're ending,
Hold on,
and
keep
then
going, keep
Hunter
going,
has
keep
to
going.
try to find a quote from the movie because he can't remember anything from movies.
I love the fact that we're just not going to explain at all why like Hannah isn't in this
I
episode.
know. I realized
It's just-
that we didn't.
It's
cover
just
that.
going to people go into this and they're just gonna be like, why is Hannah
Yeah.
not here?
Yeah, she's
Who's this-
busy. I
Who's
don't
this
know.
other
Right.
weirdo?
She's out for this week at least, and
Yeah.
it's just we were gonna have Aiden on anyway, so it's great.
It's just,
And it's
worked
all
out.
good.
Yeah, we'll sort things out. Next week seems like it would be a movie Hannah would like.
I
quite a
would
bit, so
expect
we're
that she will be
hoping
on.
she'll be on
for
that
next
one.
episode.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks
on.
for listening,
I-
guys. As we do when we end the podcast, and I have to say the thing.
I found the top quote on the IMDb page actually has a mildly funny story from my watching experience.
Yeah, go.
So it's a hard world for little things, which is the quote that comes after the part where the owl comes down and like snatches the bunny, right? Is that what it is? I got in joke trouble for that. Because it was really funny because
no.
I was watching it and for some reason I just thought of that Last of Us clip where she's like, "That's the cutest fucking thing I've ever seen in my life."
Yeah, right.
And then it gets shot with an arrow and she's like, like that's all I could think of, just like watching the bunny get
So you
taken.
laughed?
So I was laughing and like while that scene was happening, and Keely got so mad at me, like not, I guess legitimately, but like, bashing me, be like, "This is like a scene that's like good, and you're laughing at it." And I'm like, "Yeah," and I had to like explain myself later. And she hadn't seen the
She hadn't
Twitch
seen
clip.
it?
Yeah, she hadn't seen the clip. before,
Wow.
So
I hadn't seen that clip.
that was fun.
Oh, really?
I spent all that time that I could have been watching that clip, watching this movie for the fifth time, and watching the made-for-TV 1991 remake. Don't watch the 1991 remake of Night of the... Please, for the love of God, don't watch it.
Ooh,
I don't know why I went for that one,
I don't know.
but I think the
Oh well, I think that's it.
Bye.
Doing things, right? Like,
It's
I'm
true.
a person. I have obligations and responsibilities.
I've kind of noticed that a
Have shoes
handful
on.
of times, and I haven't really taken advantage of that. That's true.
It's important being clean, being dressed, being getting your makeup on if you're that kind of person. Having your area clean, like
Mm-hmm.
having the room clean, changes all of everything, and my brain works when the room is clean. And I'll be writing an essay, I'll be working on something, and I'll be like, everything around me is dirty. I'm literally incapable of doing anything right now.
I think
And then I clean it.
subconsciously I need my room to be dirty, because whenever I clean it, it almost immediately goes back to a certain level of dirty, but it never gets worse than that. It doesn't like get progressively worse. It just gets to a level, and it stays at that level until I decide to clean it. And I think my brain just likes it at that level.
Maybe you should just get used to like keeping it clean. Like, this is a controversial statement that your parents probably would have told you when you were 6, but if you keep your room clean, you put something away after you use it, you never gotta clean your room again.
Well, a big problem of that is I need to burn everything I own. No. I need to burn it because I don't I don't need it. I just need to burn it.
And to be fair, you also don't really have space for the amount of things you have.
No, I don't.
Like, there's not like a very, like, you need to get some sort of organization system going.
I own like almost 200 Blu-rays/DVDs. And they're just everywhere.
You have them piled, some of them in your closet.
I have them piled everywhere, along with books I've never read.
And
or
also
books I've half read and
like
just forgotten.
Rows and rows of dusty martini glasses. I don't know if you still have those there, but
oh yeah, no, I still got those. They're filled with spare change.
and also that
so much
painting
spare
of the
change.
dog with tits.
It's
like
a
the
nursing
tit
dog.
I don't like the tit dog.
Somebody painted that for their grandmother. It has a plaque on it. I don't know.
The tit dog is not good. Don't. We've talked about this. If we ever like get a place and move and stuff, there needs to be somewhere that thing goes that I don't ever have to see it.
Yeah, it'll be right next to Malcolm
can
because nobody except me likes a humanoid male figure staring at them from the corner while they sleep.
Yeah, I'm not massively into it. I had a roommate that had like this like 3D poster of like the human body with all of its weird things on the wall and like skeleton, whatever, facing directly at me.
Yeah.
I couldn't handle it, actually. I mean, there were lots of things about that situation that arguably I couldn't handle, but that was a big one. When he came in carrying that thing, I was like, this is going to be a rough year. And I was right. Anyway, the fun thing is, I think everybody now at school in my university, Americans say college all the time, but then people are like, oh, just college, not university.
Just
and
go
I'm
to
like, wait,
uni.
no, I mean university.
Yeah.
So we should just say uni. At my uni, they know that I record this.
Mm-hmm.
They also know what the topic is. However, what they don't expect is that we open with talking about dog tits. Like, that's something...
Have we been recording this whole time?
Yeah, they wouldn't expect that this is
Guys.
explicit. This is a cold open. So cold, you didn't even know. That's how cold. It's more like
It's very
stealth
cold. I
open.
wondered.
You didn't see me like lean down there and press the button. I did it.
I thought we were just waiting
It's true.
for like people to finish showering
Yeah.
and dryers to finish going.
Unfortunately, no. You have to deal with it as it is. I'm ready. We're good. Okay.
Put the tit dog over my bed on the ceiling.
Oh, you really don't want that. The line work is surprisingly sloppy.
You're just everything with tits has to be over you, doesn't
Yes.
it?
I just wanted to make you uncomfortable. I'm sorry.
Bestiality on top of everything else, on top of actually having some sort of, I don't know, you're problematic in my brain only. And I think more people have problems with bestiality than just me.
I think most people have problems with
Hopefully,
bestiality.
yeah.
Hunter,
One might
you're
think.
canceled. You're canceled.
Aw, man.
Anyway, welcome to the movie.